Thiel doesn't just flirt with the apocalyptic, he goes all in, openly discussing the Antichrist, naming Pope Leo as a potential manifestation of that figure. In Thiel's apocalyptic vision, the Antichrist isn't a horned beast so much as a seductive movement bent on halting human progress. That's tech and AI, of course. In Vance, it says Thiel apparently sees a future leader for 2028 who will champion the idea that unfettered technological disruption should trump old norms and institutions. That means unfettered, unregulated AI, right? Hi everyone, JJ here. Welcome back to the Johnston Lounge. Well, Peter Thiel, controversial tech billionaire, is managing to cause controversy yet again. Surprise, surprise. There's a couple of articles we're going to look at for this story. This one is Letters from Leo, the American Pope, and US politics. J.D. Vance's top donor, that's Peter Thiel, suggests Pope Leo is the Antichrist. In a leaked lecture, Peter Thiel says he urged J.D. Vance to ignore the Pope in moral questions and simply pray for him. Now, he did bring up a number of people as possibly potentially being the Antichrist without pointing to himself. I've done a few videos on this. And there's this article too in relation to J.D. Vance. And Peter Thiel is a donor, has been a donor of J.D. Vance, is largely responsible for getting him to where he is in politics at this point. Does J.D. Vance have a Palantir problem? Palantir is Peter Thiel's company's the co-founder, still involved, not as CEO, but still involved. He's a big tech investor, very far right wing, doesn't even like democracy. He's come out and said that before in his own words. Now, it says 3 weeks ago, a series of leaked recordings and transcripts from a private lecture series in San Francisco began circulating. Now, I've reported on this before, but we didn't know much about what was in it. They included comments from tech billionaire Peter Thiel, the most important political patron of Vice President J.D. Vance and one of the wealthiest, most influential minds in Silicon Valley. In these lectures, Thiel doesn't just flirt with the apocalyptic, he goes all in, openly discussing the Antichrist, naming Pope Leo as a potential manifestation of that figure, the Antichrist, and most disturbingly, advising J.D. Vance to ignore the Pope on moral matters altogether. Now, this Pope's known to be left-leaning. Could that have something to do with it? A lot to do with it, I would say. Let that sink in. The main backer of the likely GOP nominee for president is accusing the Bishop of Rome of being an agent of the end times and telling Vice President Vance to disregard the Pope's moral guidance. So what is this all about? Why is he doing that? And what's he got against this Pope in particular? Thiel is religious. Well, he says that he is. I think it goes back. He's far right and religious. What a combination. And yet, outside this community, the story barely made a dent. No major religion reporter ran with it. No flagship tech newsletter dug into the theological implications. No one in mainstream political media even seemed to notice. Well, I'm noticing. That's because so many institutions, religious, secular, and digital alike, are siloed. They miss the big story precisely because they're too entrenched in their spheres to see what's happening at the intersections. Now, there are a few intersections here. We've got big tech, politics, and J.D. Vance, of course. And as they said, J.D. Vance is in a position to be the president one day, perhaps soon rather than later. We'll have to see what happens with Trump, but that is a possibility. And Peter Thiel is right in there. So you might have noticed, or I've certainly noticed, that there's a big push for Christian nationalism, especially since Charlie Kirk died. Erica Kirk's in there. I mean, it was a big podcast. He was an important player in the MAGA scene, and it's only become more and more like that. Dare I say, white Christian nationalism is becoming dominant. But we have Peter Thiel in here saying, don't listen to the Pope because he's left leaning. I mean, what do a lot of the Christians think about this? Is this good for JD Vance's future or not? Is Peter Thiel causing trouble here? So it goes on to say here that in his lectures on the Antichrist, Peter Thiel has unveiled a techno-utopian creed that clashes with traditional Christianity. So this could cause problems for JD Vance if he wants to court the Christians in the US, right? I mean, I'm not one, I'm not in the US and I'm not a Christian, but I do see that it's a very strong, even Trump, who likely hasn't gone to a church, been inside a church in his life without doing it for political reasons, I would say. He even understands that it's important to have that base, even on the left, like mainstream Democrats do like to court, Christianity in the US because it's definitely bigger than some other countries. There are a lot of people. I was just looking at a troll on X who was gun-toting Christian and pro-white, they said. And you see so many profiles like that. And I did check to see if they were actually in the US and not in some other country, but that's been another controversy lately. But there seems to be so many people like that, a big base of people like that Trump definitely courts, right? And JD Vance would probably have to do that as well. And so is Peter Thiel. What's his game here? What's he playing at? Does he think that he can convince people that the Antichrist is the left? That seems to be what he's getting at here. He's called Greta Thunberg and the Antichrist as well. Well, these potential candidates, but he's not a candidate, somebody who's involved in Palantir and surveillance, but more on that in a minute. It's an alarming stance, especially given Thiel's outsized influence on Vance, they say, a rising Republican star widely seen as the party's top 2028 presidential contender. And what if Trump died in office? I just saw a video of him today limping quite severely. His health doesn't seem to be in the best these days. So they say Thiel's Antichrist lecture, it wasn't just one lecture, it was a series of lectures. That's how serious he is about this. Name-checked Pope Leo suggested that Thiel has encouraged JD Vance to ignore the moral advice of the Pope and offer a window into the Silicon Valley spirituality that is profoundly heterodox, closer to ancient Gnosticism than to Christian orthodoxy. And they insist technology and human innovation are the true sources of salvation. So, yes, pushing that really AI tech is the true God. It seems to be what a lot of these tech people, these tech billionaires want, is to create God in a box. That's what people have been saying. That's the way it's been framed, to create AI that's super intelligent, that really is a kind of God. And Peter Thiel's talked about transhumanism, which is popular in Silicon Valley. There's not transgenderism. They seem to be against that these days. More transhumanism, where we can upload our minds to the grid, or probably they think that they'll be the first to do that. We get to super intelligence. We can make a copy of the human brain, a digital copy, upload it to the grid, and live forever. Immortality. Basically, tech is God. I think that's the stance that they have. So this secondary headline here, tech billionaire mocks Pope Leo's AI warning and reveals Silicon Valley's original sin. A billionaire tech guru openly mocked Leo's call for moral AI and quickly backtracked after backlash. It's a telling collision of Silicon Valley hubris with a pope they cannot buy, bully, or ignore. This is deeply concerning since Thiel is the main patron behind Vance's political ascent. Yes, and they can see here that JD Vance is lining up to be the president one day, who Thiel has his ear and is a major donor. Likely he would ramp up support just like Elon Musk ramped up support for Trump, that $277 million or so that he donated to Trump and really got to be shadow president. Can we see a time when Thiel steps up and puts a lot of money towards JD Vance to be president, and Elon Musk too? Maybe others, maybe a lot of these tech guys will help in the campaign for getting Thiel elected if they can get JD Vance to do what they want. Thiel and Vance, an unholy alliance, it says. Thiel's alliance with JD Vance is no accident. The pair first connected over a decade ago when Vance was a Yale law student impressed by Thiel's contrarian ideas. Thiel soon became a mentor and benefactor, recruiting Vance into his venture firm and later bankrolling Vance's political rise. So Peter Thiel's pretty strategic, sort of in the background. He's not as brash, not as well known as Musk. In fact, Vance's 2022 Senate victory in Ohio would not have happened without Thiel's $15 million investment. And he would see this as an investment in a politician to do what? Why would he invest in a politician? To get his political agenda through, to get his tech agenda through? Both of those things, right? Thiel knew what he was buying. Vance had worked for Thiel's California venture capital fund and immersed himself in Thiel's libertarian tech milieu. Now Thiel is betting that Vance can carry his worldview to the pinnacle of power. So he's just waiting in the wings or in the background here, ready to support Vance and other people too, probably. He's probably got other people in mind if it doesn't work out. One associate even calls Vance a generational bet for Thiel, a protege groomed to advance a new political movement shaped by Silicon Valley's elite. So not many people know about this. I don't know if you've heard of Curtis Yarvin, but he is a pseudo-philosopher. I say pseudo because what he writes is, it's basically not very good, but what he was pushing for is definitely pro-fascist, and it's something that Thiel and Mark Andreessen and some of the other tech billionaires have looked to. And if you look at what he's written, it's to have a CEO dictator as the president and really pro-fascist. That's what it's like. And a lot of people really don't know this, but they haven't kept it a secret. They've talked about it on podcasts, written about it. In Vance, it says Thiel apparently sees a future leader for 2028 who will champion the idea that unfettered technological disruption should trump old norms and institutions. So, unfettered technological disruption, that means unfettered, unregulated AI, right? And they have a lot of ideas in mind that I won't go into here, but Thiel has made no secret of what he wants. He likes crypto. He has talked about crypto taking over one day as an alternative currency, being the main currency. They're very much Ayn Rand fans, so very libertarian, but really libertarian that's turned into tech fascism, as Gil Duran has talked about on his website and in his podcast, The Nerd Reich. He's talked a lot about this in depth. And they say in Thiel's apocalyptic vision, the Antichrist isn't a horned beast so much as a seductive movement bent on halting human progress. That's tech and AI, of course. No regulation. Obviously, they don't want regulation. It's one of the reasons that Elon went into government with guns blazing, so to speak, and putting a lot of money in because he was concerned about too much regulation for his own companies. But he didn't say that up front. He said a little bit. Or if you're following Tesla and SpaceX, you'll know that he doesn't like the regulation on those companies, his companies. So that was a big part of it. But he said it was about saving money, finding fraud and abuse and all that. At his exclusive lectures in San Francisco, Thiel argued that the ultimate end times tyrant would come as a Luddite who wants to stop all science. Okay, if you look at what the Trump administration was doing, what Elon was doing, they cut science programs, some medical things that were on the verge or really making advances in cancer cures, even using doomsday fears to seize global control over technology. Wow, this just seems really kind of anxious and bizarre, doesn't it, to think that the world is out to get you, that people are out to stop science and any regulation whatsoever is bad. He railed against legionnaires of the Antichrist in today's world. a cast that, in his view, includes environmentalists, international agencies, and regulators who urge caution on AI or climate change. Well, I mean, all of the things, ticks all of the boxes from the far right. Well, Elon Musk has this company that's about sustainable abundance. It used to be about sustainable energy, but he's aligned with this too. He doesn't seem to care about any of that. Was it really about the money and power to begin with? Thiel even name checked climate activist Greta Thunberg as a possible unwitting agent of this evil, lumping her in with bureaucrats whose stringent rules might shackle innovation. But even more shocking was Thiel's decision to bring Pope Leo into the mix. It might be a bridge too far, we'll have to see, but as they say, it hasn't really been reported widely, but this is an interesting aspect of these private lectures, these secret lectures. I mean, this stuff shouldn't be secret, especially if he's the backer of JD Vance, right? Now we get to this. Does JD Vance have a Palantir problem? What do they mean by this? In a recent conversation, Vice President JD Vance asked Roger Stone, President Trump's longtime confidant, for the biggest concern facing the country. Stone later recalled on his radio show that his answer was the technology company Vance now hears about with increasing frequency, Palantir. And of course, Peter Thiel is involved in that as a co founder. For years, Democrats have zeroed in on Vance's relationship with Palantir's co founder Peter Thiel, the iconoclastic tech titan who gave Vance one of his first jobs, which we've just heard about, and the $15 million behind the successful 2022 Ohio state bid. Now, they talk about Democrats have zeroed in on, well, when the Democrats were in power, the Biden administration, Palantir also had government contracts. So you can talk about one side or the other, but they both have worked with Palantir, in the so called deep state. So that was a Democratic administration as well, not just the current administration. So these tech guys really just work with whoever is convenient, whether it's left or right. They have a sort of different agenda, as I said, this tech fascism. And they really, I don't think, care if it's left or right, as long as they can get what they want. I'm sure Peter Thiel, well, he is more far right, so he kind of cares, but some of the others probably don't care so much if they can get what they want done. But the pressure on Vance is now coming from inside Trump's coalition as the administration steers billions of dollars of new work to Palantir. Prominent voices have expressed fears that the firm's powerful data analytics tool could give the government sweeping, almost futuristic surveillance capabilities. MAGA architect Steve Bannon has likened Palantir to a sci fi villain, while comedian Joe Rogan called the company creepy on his top ranked podcast. Okay, I'm going to have to correct some of that because I do follow Joe Rogan. I've made videos about it. There was a recent video with Joe Rogan and Theo Von where Theo Von was kind of against Palantir. He was warning about it and Peter Thiel, and Joe Rogan was really taking their side, saying that Peter Thiel was speaking the truth and that Palantir isn't doing surveillance. He didn't seem to know that much about it actually, but he backed Peter Thiel, almost a friend. So this is incorrect from that point of view. If he called it creepy, he might have just been agreeing with Theo Von or somebody else on a small point, but the wider point is he actually agrees with it, doesn't see anything wrong with it, likes Palantir, likes Peter Thiel, sucks up to these tech billionaires, has them on, interviewing them, never asks any difficult questions about this at all. But Steve Bannon really does not like these people. He warns against Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, these tech billionaires. He knows what they want to do, but he is kind of pro-fascist too, right? Just in a different way. He is religious. He's with those religious people, and he can see that they're not really into that, or that it's fake, that it's just convenient for them. He really rails against these people. He does not want them to succeed in this. So we've got people on the left that are really against Thiel and what they're doing, and then people on the far right as well, just a different faction of it, don't like this either. And they'll be in JD Vance's ear as well. Steve Bannon will be trying to be about this, warning against what they want. I'm sure of it. So the rising unease has put Vance on the defensive, they say. At an October gathering of young conservatives at the University of Mississippi, he bristled at this internet meme out there that somehow I am super in bed with Palantir when the company's name surfaced. Palantir is a private company, Vance added. They sometimes do a useful service and sometimes they're going to do things that we don't like. Well, a private company, but with massive government contracts, seemingly more and more government contracts as well. So he knows that. He knows how close to the government they are. So I'd really like to know what you think about this. What do you think about Peter Thiel calling the Pope the Antichrist? It's not just the Pope, he's called other people too, or potential characters that could be, but not pointing to him. So a guy that's a co-founder of a company that's involved in surveillance and working with ICE too and the government and military, could that not be more towards it? It's like projection. He wants everybody else to be the Antichrist, pointing to everybody, but not to himself. Let me know what you think about this. And right now, I'm going to put a related video on screen if you're watching on YouTube, and related videos in the description on Spotify and on YouTube, the two places where these videos are. And wherever you're listening to this as well, these links will be in the description. I'm also going to put a subscribe link on screen for YouTube. Do subscribe if you're not yet, and follow on Spotify too. It's a growing number over there as well. Thanks for watching this one, and I'll see you in the next one.